flight. Yeah. Whoa, look at that. We're going to take a flight to get it anywhere we want. Trina, hey girl, hey. Oh, that I do know some. That's twabble. Maybe your first time or whatever, but you'll be aight. You'll be aight. I mean, if you, what, I guess it just really depends on the person.
Underboard. I don't know what's a joke.
Why is that funny?
No, because like they're good though.
Time for the day, beautiful people. Time for the day. I'm bringing up my shimmer here. You hear my son laughing in the background. Shalom. Peace and blessings, Aliyah. Peace and blessings. Shayla, that's Bible, great rising. Okay, beautiful people.
My name is Aliyah.
You say your name? No, that's your brother Elijah.
Somebody Aliyah.
No, son.
What's mom?
We'll talk about this in a minute.
No.
Your Hebrew translations and stuff. Aliyah is Elijah. Aliyah. Right? Remember in Hebrew there is no E. The proper pronunciation is with an A. Alright. Okay, but because of all the translations and all this stuff, they put it in there, which is whatever. We know the truth. Okay. Alright, so we'll talk about that. Name pronunciation, the proper way to say it. Alright, people. It is Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, March the 31st, 2021. Day 116 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count. Day 785. 785. Today, y'all, we're reading 2 Samuel chapter 1, 2, and 3, and then we're hopping over to the Legends of the Jews, picking it up on page 454, and guess what? We're talking about Elijah's protege, Elisha, right? Boom. Y'all gonna learn some stuff y'all probably didn't know before. I mean, if you read ahead, then you probably know, but most people have not, if they have not come across these particular manuscripts, right? Okay. Today is also the 4th day of Feast of Unleavened Bread. So if you have not been eating it, don't worry. Just try and make some today. We didn't eat any yesterday, but, just remember it's the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So, just eat a piece every day or something. Or if you really enjoy it, eat a lot of it. It's a feast. All right, y'all. Let's start with the shimmer so we can get going. Oh, wait. Hold on, bruh. How are you going to make, I done already started my video. That's going to take 2 minutes to blend. And it's going to be loud. Oh, you going to wait an hour? Okay. Go ahead, stick it in there or whatever. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuah, the God of our fathers, has promised us, in a land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuah, our God, He is one God, and you shall love Yahuah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuah commanded us to do all these statutes to fear Yahuah our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuah our God as he has commanded us. All right. Oh, don't move that, son. See, coming down here, mess with stuff first thing in the morning. Moving stuff around. Phone almost fell. You gonna close this deep freezer behind me? Yeah, about to make him a smoothie. About to use this blender that's gonna be extremely loud. Yeah, thank you.
What happens to the Vitamix thing? Like that. Not that. The other small one.
The one that I used to bring.
That wasn't a Vitamix, that was a bullet. It broke. That's why I use my handy dandy Vitamix. Okay, beautiful people. So let's get started reading here. TT, hey, hey. Greetings, greetings. Uncle Nathaniel. Belinda Brown, shalom, shalom. Okay, y'all. Let's minimize this right here. Oh, Shayla, I just saw your message come through. I was amazed at how well he knew those multiple languages, right? I looked him up, but do you know that he passed away? Yes, he did. I went through it and I clicked on the video. I was trying to find him. I was trying to find out a little bit about him and what he did to learn all those multiple languages. Clearly, he studied, right? But as I started reading some of the comments, they said he had passed away not too long ago. He had a heart attack. He was having heart issues, you know. So I'm like, sheesh, you know. But he walked up on some people speaking their language. They say he speak their language better than they speak their language, right? It was the video was freaking awesome. But okay, yeah, he just studied, you know. So, but okay. All right, beautiful people. 2 Samuel chapter 1. After the death of Saul, David returned from his victory over the Amalekites and spent 2 days in Ziklag. On the third day, the man arrived from Saul's army camp. He had torn his clothes and put dirt on his head to show that he was in mourning. He fell to the ground before David in deep respect. "Where have you come from?" David asked. "I escaped from the Israelite camp," the man replied. "What happened?" David demanded. "Tell me about how the battle went." The man replied, "Our entire army fled from the battle. Many of the men are dead, and Saul and his son Jonathan are also dead." "How do you know that Saul and Jonathan are dead?" David demanded the young man. The man answered, "I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear with the enemy chariots and charioteers closing in on him. When he turned and saw me, he cried out for me to come to him. How can I help?" I asked him. He responded, "Who are you?" "I am an Amalekite," I told him. Then he begged me, "Come over here and put me out of my misery, for I am in terrible pain and want to die." "So I killed him," the Amalekite told David, "for I knew he couldn't live. Then I took his crown and his armband, and I have brought them here to you, my lord." David and his men tore their clothes in sorrow when they heard the news. They mourned and wept and fasted all day for Saul and his son Jonathan, for Yahuah's army and the nation of Israel, because they had died by the sword that day. When David said to the young man who brought the news, David said to the young man who brought the news, "Where are you from?" And he replied, "I am a foreigner, an Amalekite who lives in your land." "Why were you not afraid to kill Yahuah's anointed one?" David asked. Then David said to one of his men, "Kill him." So the man thrust his sword into the Amalekite and killed him. "You have condemned yourself," David said, "for you yourself confessed that you killed Yahuah's anointed one." This man thought he was doing a good thing, right? Come to let David know that the king was no longer among the land of the living. Then David composed a funeral song for Saul and Jonathan, and he commanded it to be taught to the people of Judah. It is also known as the Song of the Bow, and it is recorded in the book of YAHsharEL. So if y'all read the book of YAHsharEL, you will come across this song that he wrote for Saul and Jonathan. Your pride and joy, O Israel, lies dead on the hills. Oh, how the mighty heroes have fallen. Don't announce the news in Gath. Don't proclaim it in the streets of Ashkelon, or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice, and the pagans will laugh in triumph. O mountains of Gibor, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor fruitful fields producing offerings of grain, for there the shield of the mighty heroes was defiled. And the shield of Saul would no longer be anointed with oil. The bow of Jonathan was powerful, and the sword of Saul did its mighty work. They shed the blood of their enemies and pierced the body of mighty heroes. How beloved and gracious were Saul and Jonathan. They were together in life and in death. They were swifter than the eagles, stronger than lions. O women of Israel, weep for Saul, for he dressed you in luxurious scarlet clothing and garments decorated with gold. Oh, how the mighty heroes have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies dead on the hills. How I weep for you, my brother Jonathan. Oh, how much I loved you, and your love for me was deep, deeper than the love of a woman. Oh, how the mighty heroes have fallen. Stripped of their weapons, they lie dead. All right, let's move on to 2 Samuel chapter 2. After this, David asked Yahuah, should I move back to one of the towns of Judah? Yes, Yahuah replied. Then David asked, which town should I go to? To Hebron, Yahuah answered. David's 2 wives were Ahinoam from Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. So David and his wives and his men and their families all moved to Judah, and they settled in the villages near Hebron. And then the men of Judah came to David and anointed him king over the people of Judah. When David heard that the men of Jabesh-Gilead had buried Saul, he sent them this message. May Yahuah bless you for your being so loyal to your master Saul and giving him a decent burial. May Yahuah be loyal to you in return and reward you with his unfailing love. And I too will reward you for what you have done. Now that Saul is dead, I ask you to be my strong and loyal subjects like the people of Judah who have anointed me as their new king. But Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had already gone to Mahanaim with Saul's son Ishbosheth. There he proclaimed Ishbosheth king over Gilead, Jezreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, and the land of the Asherites, and all the rest of Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king, and he ruled from Mahanaim for 2 years. Meanwhile, the people of Judah remained loyal to David. David made Hebron his capital, and he ruled as king of Judah for 7.5 years. One day, Abner led Ishbosheth's troops to from Mahanaim to Gibeon. About the same time, Joab, the son of Zeruiah, led David's troops out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. The 2 groups sat down there, facing each other from the opposite ends of the pools. Then Abner suggested to Joab, let's have a few of our warriors fight hand to hand here in front of us. All right, Joab agreed. So 12 men were chosen to fight from each side. 12 men of Benjamin, representing Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 representing David. Each one grabbed his opponent by the hair and thrust his sword into the other side so that all of them died. So this place at Gibeon has been known ever since as the Field of Swords. A fierce battle followed that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were defeated by the forces of David. Joab, Abishai, and Asahel, the 3 sons of Zeruiah, were among David's forces that day. Asahel could run like a gazelle, and he began chasing Abner. He pursued him relentlessly, not stopping for anything. When Abner looked back and saw him coming, he called out, "Is that you, Asahel?" "Yes, it is," he replied. "Go fight someone else," Abner warned. "Take one of the younger men and strip him of his weapons." But Asahel kept right on chasing Abner. And again, Abner shouted to him, "Get away from here. I don't want to kill you. How could I ever face your brother Joab again?" But Asahel refused to turn back. So Abner thrust the butt end of his spear through Asahel's stomach, and the spear came out through his back. He stumbled to the ground and died there, and everyone who came by that spot stopped and stood still when they saw Asahel lying there. When Joab and Abishai found out what had happened, they set out after Abner. The sun was just going down as they arrived at the hill of Ammah near Giah along the road of the wilderness of Gibeon. Abner's troops from the tribe of Benjamin regrouped there at the top of the hill to take a stand. Abner shouted down to Joab, "Must we always be killing each other? Don't you realize that bitterness is the only result? When will you call off your men from chasing their Israelite brothers?" Then Joab said, "Yahuah only knows what would have happened if you hadn't spoken, for we would have chased you all night if necessary." So Joab blew the ram's horn, and his men stopped chasing the troops of Israel. All that night, Abner and his men retreated through the Jordan Valley. They crossed the Jordan River, traveling all through the morning, and didn't stop until they arrived at Manahem. Meanwhile, she was really loud. Meanwhile, Joab and his men also returned home. When Joab counted his casualties, he discovered that only 19 men were missing, in addition to Asahel, but 360 of Abner's men had been killed, all from the tribe of Benjamin. Joab and his men took Asahel's body to Bethlehem and buried him there in his father's tomb. Then they traveled all night and reached Hebron at daybreak. Last chapter for today, 2 Samuel chapter 3. Then we're hopping over to the Legends of the Jews, which should really be called the Legends of the Hebrews. That was the beginning
What is that?
of a long war between those who were loyal to Saul and those loyal to David. As time passed, David became stronger and stronger, while Saul's dynasty became weaker and weaker. These are the sons who were born to David in Hebron. The oldest was Amnon, whose mother was Ahinoam from Jezreel. The second was Daniel, whose mother was Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. The third was Absalom, whose mother was Maacah, the daughter of Talmi, king of Geshur. The fourth was Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith. The fifth was Shephatiah, whose mother was Abital.
Every time it does this, it be
The sixth was Ithream, whose mother was Eglah, David's wife. These sons were all born to David at Hebron. As the war between the house of Saul and the house of David went on, Abner became a powerful leader among those loyal to Saul. One day, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, accused Abner of sleeping with one of his father's concubines, a woman named Rizpah, daughter of Aiah. A-I-A-H. I'm sorry, y'all. I know I screwed her name up. Aiah. That's good. We're going to go with that. Aiah. Abner was furious. "Am I some Judean dog to be kicked around like this?" he shouted. "After all I have done for you, your father, Saul, and his family and friends." After all I have done for your father, Saul, and his family and friends by not handing you over to David, is this my reward, that you find fault with me about this woman? May Yahuah strike me and even kill me if I don't do everything I can to help David get what Yahuah has promised him. I am going to take Saul's kingdom and give it to David. I will establish the throne of David over Israel as well as Judah, all the way from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. Ishbosheth didn't dare say another word because he was afraid of what Abner might do. Then Abner sent messengers to David saying, "Doesn't the entire land belong to you? Make a solemn pact with me, and I will help turn over all of Israel to you." "All right," David replied, "but I will not negotiate with you unless you bring back my wife Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come." David sent this message to Ishbosheth, Saul's sons. "Give me back my wife Michal, for I bought her with the lives of 100 Philistines." So Ishbosheth took Michal away from her husband Palti, the son of Laish. Palti followed along behind her as far as Bahurim, weeping as he went. Then Abner told him, "Go back home." So Palti returned. That's terrible. I mean, what was terrible? She was stolen from David and given to this other man. But apparently he loved her so much he followed them, crying, wanting his wife back. But what can you say? She was David's wife first, and she was taken from him because Saul was mad with him. Meanwhile, Abner had consulted with the elders of Israel. For some time now, he told them, you have wanted to make David your king. Now is the time. For Yahuah has said, I have chosen David to save my people Israel from the hands of the Philistines and from all their other enemies. Abner also spoke with the men of Benjamin. Then he went to Hebron to tell David that all the people of Israel and Benjamin had agreed to support him. When Abner and 20 of his men came to Hebron, David entertained them with a great feast. Then Abner said to David, let me go and call an assembly of all of Israel to support my lord the king. Then they will make a covenant with you and make you their king, and you will rule over everything your heart desires. So David sent Abner safely on his way. But just after David sent Abner away in safety, Joab and some of David's troops returned from a raid, bringing much plunder with them. When Joab arrived, he was told that Abner had just been there visiting the king, and he had been sent away in safety. Joab rushed to the king and demanded, what have you done? What do you mean by letting Abner get away? You know perfectly well that he came to spy on you and find out everything you're doing. Joab then left David and sent messengers to catch up with Abner, asking him to return. They found him at the well of Sirah and brought him back, though David knew nothing about it. When Abner arrived back at Hebron, Joab took him aside at the gateway as if to speak with him privately, but then he stabbed Abner in the stomach and killed him in revenge for killing his brother Asahel. When David heard about it, he declared, I vow by Yahuah that I and my kingdom are forever innocent of this crime against Abner, son of Ner. Joab and his family are the guilty ones. May the family of Joab be cursed in every generation with a man who has open sores or leprosy, or who walks on crutches, or dies by the sword, or begs for food. So Joab and his brother Abishai killed Abner because Abner had killed their brother Asahel at the battle of Gibeon. Then David said to Joab and all that were with him, tear your clothes and put on burlap, mourn for Abner. And King David himself walked behind the procession to the grave. They buried Abner in Hebron, and the king and all the people wept at his gravesite. Then the king sang this funeral song for Abner. Should Abner have died as fools die? Your hands were not bound, your feet were not chained. No, you were murdered, the victim of a wicked plot. All the people again wept for Abner. David had refused to eat anything on the day of the funeral, and now everyone begged him to eat. But David had made a vow, saying, may Yahuah strike me and even kill me if I eat anything before sundown. This pleased the people very much. In fact, everything the king did pleased them. So everyone in Judah and all Israel understood that David was not responsible for Abner's murder. Then King David said to his officials, don't you realize that a great commander has fallen in Israel today? And even though I am anointed king, these two sons of Zeruiah, Joab and Abishai, are too strong for me to control. So may Yahuah repay these evil men for their evil deeds. All right, beautiful people. That was 2 Samuel 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. So
we want to smack David. First, we get to the killing of the dude with the front line to get his wife, and then is this crap?
Well, see, you gotta go through it and
all the way messed up.
Yeah, it is.
Picking off of that impulse and not that brain.
Yeah, it's a bunch of drama going on, all up and through here. Okay, y'all. So we're in chapter 8 today. We just finished up this section, reading about Elijah and the forerunner of the Messiah. We read, that was the only section we read yesterday, but today we're going to chapter 8, and we're reading about Elijah's protege, Elisha. And we're going to read about Elisha and Jonah. Okay? Joanne, good morning. Josiah, shalom, shalom. Nikki, Betwabu. Okay, y'all. All right. So we're on page 454. All right, y'all, listen to this. This is really good. It's always good, but still, it's really good. Okay, listen to this, y'all. Yeah, I should have checked my volume before I started. Okay, we good. Okay. Elisha, the disciple of Elijah. The voices of the thousands of prophets of his time were stilled when Elijah was translated from earth to heaven. With him vanished the prophetical spirit of those who in former times had in no wise been his inferiors. Elisha was the only one among them whose prophetical powers were not diminished. On the contrary, they were strengthened as a reward for the unhesitating readiness with which he obeyed Elijah's summons and parted with the field he was plowing, and with all else he possessed in favor of the community. Okay, let me go back. I'm gonna read that again. All right. So this is saying that when Elijah was taken up, all the guild of prophets, remember they had already executed some 800 prophets of Baal, although the Bible said it was only 450. But when we read through here, it was like almost double the amount that was present, right? So not just them, but the entire prophetical spirit that rested on the different people of this generation during Elijah's day. When Elijah was taken up, the prophetical spirit left with him, and it only remained on Elisha. Matter of fact, he had a double portion, it says, of the prophetical spirit from Yah that Elijah carried, right?
I was just saying, I can't wait until you get to the part there when they talk about present day, and you were like, oh my God.
Okay. The voices of the thousands of prophets of his time were stilled when Elijah was translated from earth to heaven. With him vanished the prophetical spirit of those in whom in former times had in no wise been his inferiors. Elisha was the only one among them whose prophetical powers were not diminished. On the contrary, they were strengthened as a reward for the unhesitating readiness with which he obeyed Elijah's summons and parted with the field he was plowing and with all else he possessed in favor of the community. Thenceforward, he remained Elijah's unwearying companion. When the angel descended from heaven to take Elijah from earth, he found the two so immersed in a learned discussion that he could not attract their attention, and he had to return his errand unfulfilled. Elijah's promise to bestow a double portion of his wondrous spirit upon his disciple was realized instantaneously. During his life, Elisha performed 16 miracles, and 8 was all his master had performed. The first of them, the crossing of the Jordan, was more remarkable than the corresponding wonder done by Elijah, for Elisha traversed the river alone, and Elijah had been accompanied by Elisha. So when Elijah walked across the Jordan River, he walked across the water. When Elijah, the great prophet Elijah, walked across the Jordan River, Elisha was with him. But after Elijah was taken, Elijah, they said it was greater than it was with when he did it with Elijah, because everybody, you walking with Elijah, of course you can walk across, you with Elijah, my dude. But after Elijah was taken, they found it to be more great of a miracle, because Elisha did the same thing, and he walked by himself. He walked himself across that huge ocean, lake, stream of water, whatever you want to call it, the Jordan River. He walked across it by himself. Okay. During his lifetime, Elisha performed 16 miracles, and 8 was all his master Elijah had performed. The first of them, the crossing of the Jordan, was more remarkable than the corresponding wonder done by Elijah, for Elisha traversed the river alone, and Elijah had been accompanied by Elisha. 2 saints always have more power than one by himself. His second miracle, the healing of the waters of Jericho, so that they became fit to drink, resulted in harm to himself, for the people who had earned their livelihood by the sale of wholesome water were very much incensed against the prophet for having spoiled their trade. Elisha, whose prophetic powers enabled him to read both past and the future of these tradesmen, knew that they, their ancestors, and their posterity had not even the aroma of good about them. Therefore he cursed them. Suddenly a forest sprang up, and the bears that infested it devoured the murmuring traders. The wicked fellows were not undeserving of the punishment they received, yet Elisha was made to undergo a very serious sickness by way of correction for having yielded to passion. Remember this? Moses got in trouble for this. His anger kept him from going into the promised land, right? Yahuah said, your anger does not accomplish anything that I want to do. He said, and by you doing this, you did not sanctify me as holy in front of the eyes of all these people. And for that, my dear son, you cannot go into the promised land. Right?
A harsh punishment.
It should be a harsh punishment.
It's like, no, but his is crazy. Like, God,
yeah, it is
dude.
crazy. Like, you literally represent the Most High. Like, you can't go in here doing whatever you want to do. That's why teachers, they're held at a higher level of responsibility, and they're dealt with quickly, right?
See,
That's why kings, they was being uprooted left and right, because although we seem to get a little more grace and length of time to repent, those who are in charge, they get once, twice, possibly 3 times. But Yahuah can't let them lead being rebels. Otherwise, what happens? The entire nation turns into...
No, Buddy wanted to get all nice and bright when you was talking about that.
Hold on.
He slick.
Okay, there we go.
You saw all that?
Yeah. The sun normally starts shining bright by this time. 7:47. Okay, yeah, so leaders have to be dealt with quickly because you're leading a whole, possibly, generation of people, right?
I think I'll be good at that.
You would be good at that, son. Listen to this, y'all. So y'all mind y'all anger. Learn how to deal with the anger, right? Okay. Look. Elisha, whose prophetic powers enabled him to read both the past and the future of these tradesmen, knew that they, their ancestors, and their posterity had not even the aroma of good about them. Therefore he cursed them. Suddenly a forest sprang up, and the bears that infested it devoured the murmuring traders. The wicked fellows were not undeserving of the punishment they received, yet Elisha was made to undergo a very serious sickness by way of correction for having yielded to passion. In this he resembled his master Elijah. He allowed wrath and zeal to gain the mastery over him. Yahuah desired that the 2 great prophets might be purged of this fault. Accordingly, when Elisha rebuked King Jehoram of Israel, the spirit of prophecy forsook him, and he had to resort to artificial means to reawaken it within himself. Like his teacher, Elisha was always ready to help the poor and needy, as witness his sympathy with the widow of one of the sons of the prophets, and the effective aid he extended to her. Her husband had been no other than Obadiah, who, though a prophet, had at the same time been one of the highest officials at the court of the sinful King Ahab. By birth an Edomite, Obadiah had been inspired by Yahuah to utter the prophecy against Edom. In his own person, he embodied the accusation against Esau, who had lived with his pious parents without following their example, while Obadiah, on the contrary, lived in constant intercourse with the iniquitous King Ahab and his still more iniquitous spouse Jezebel, without yielding to the baneful influence they exercised. This same Obadiah not only used his own fortune, but went to the length of borrowing money on interest from the future king in order to have the wherewithal to support the prophets who were in hiding. On his death, the king sought to hold the children responsible for the debt of the father. In her despair, the pious wife of Obadiah went to the graveyard, and there she cried out, "O thou God-fearing man!" At once a heavenly voice was heard questioning her. There are 4 God-fearing men, Abraham, Joseph, Job, and Obadiah. To which of them dost thou desire to speak? To him of whom it is said, he feared the Lord greatly. She was led to the grave of the prophet Obadiah, where she poured out the tale of her sorrow. Obadiah told her to take the small remnant of oil she had. Obadiah told her to take the small remnant of oil she had. Obadiah told her to take the small remnant of oil she still had to the prophet Elisha and requests him to intercede for him with Yahuah. For Yahuah, he said, is my debtor, seeing that I provided 100 prophets, not only with bread and water, but also with oil to illuminate their hiding place. For do not the scriptures say, he that hath pity on the poor lendeth to Yahuah? When I read that, I'm like, oh, that makes me think about this in a whole nother way. He said, wait a minute. Yahuah has a debt to me. He said, doesn't it not say those who lend to the poor lend to the Lord? I did many wonderful deeds to the poor. So Yahuah has to answer prayer, right? Listen, hold on, I'm going to go back. She was led to the grave of the prophet Obadiah, where she poured out the tale of her sorrow. Obadiah told her to take the small remnant of oil she still had to the prophet Elisha and request him to intercede for him with Yahuah. For Yahuah, he said, is my debtor, seeing that I provided 100 prophets, not only with bread and water, but also with oil to illuminate their hiding place. For do not the scriptures say, he that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord? Forthwith the woman carried out his behest. She went to Elisha, and he helped her by making her little cruse of oil fill vessels upon vessels without number. And when the vessels gave out, she fetched potsherds, saying, may the will that made the empty vessels full make broken vessels perfect. So it was. The oil ceased to flow only when the supply of potsherds as well as the vessels gave out. In her piety, the woman wanted to pay her tithe offering, but Elisha was of the opinion that as the oil had been bestowed upon her miraculously, she could keep it wholly and entirely for her own use. Furthermore, Elisha reassured her as to the power of the royal princess to do her harm. Yahuah, who closed the... Oh, so this hadn't happened. I just want to make sure that this wasn't wrong. Okay, hold on. Okay, furthermore, Elisha reassured her as to the power of the royal princess to do her harm. The God who will close the jaws of the lions set upon Daniel, and who did close the jaws of the dogs of Egypt, the same God will blind the eyes of the sons of Ahab and deafen their ears so that they can do thee no harm. Not only was the poor widow helped out of her difficulties, her descendants unto all times were provided for. The oil rose in price and yielded so much profit that they never suffered want. Okay, we're hopping on to the next section, the Shunammite. The great woman of Shunem, the sister of Abishag and wife of the prophet Iddo. I still can't find that book. There is one that I found, but that is definitely not the book of Iddo. That is a book of blasphemy and disgusting stuff. And I'm still mad to this day that I laid my eyes upon it. And all the filth, floor, filth that's inside. So, yeah, that one is out there. Even the look, I only read it because the people in the comments, they said, what is this garbage? This cannot be a prophet of God. This is not, this guy, he put the title up there. They called his title clickbait for his book. I'm like, yeah, this is, I don't know what this mess is. Because I'm in a habit of, even though somebody gives they give terrible reviews, I'll read the reviews first just to be on guard against what they said. And then I'll go myself, right? And so then I read it, and now as I'm reading through, based on what I have already acquired knowledge and understanding, will determine how I look at the book. But I had to agree with everybody in the comments this time. I was like, clearly, this is not the child of the king. I don't know who this person is, right? So, yeah, yeah. But anyway, I have not found the real scrolls from the prophet Iddo yet. I'm sure they're out there. Maybe not, but I don't know. But we know that are some that he wrote. Huh? In what? I read all of it. It was a little small one. I mean, I read it to the end just to verify. I'm just like, oh, Father, wash my eyes. These words from my brain. Okay. The great woman of Shunem, the sister of Abishag and wife of the prophet Iddo, also had cause to be deeply grateful to Elijah. When Elisha came to Shunem on his journey through the land of Israel, his holiness made a profound impression upon the Shunammite. Indeed, the prophet's eye was so awe-inspiring that no woman could look him in his face and live. Contrary to the habit of most women who are intent upon diminishing their expense and their toil, the Shunammite took delight in the privilege of welcoming the prophet to her house as a guest. She observed that not even a fly dared to approach close to the holy man, and a grateful fragrance exhaled from his person. If he were not so great a saint, she said, and the holiness of Yahuah did not invest him, there were no such pleasant fragrance about him. That he might be undisturbed, she assigned the best chambers in the house to the prophet. He, on his part, desiring to show his appreciation of her hospitality, knew no better return for her kindness than to promise that she should be blessed with a child within a year. The woman protested, "Oh, my husband is an old man, nor am I of an age to bear children. The promise cannot be fulfilled." Yet it happened as the prophet had foretold. Before the 12th month had passed, she was a mother. A few years later, her child died a sudden death. The mother repaired to the prophet and lamented before him, "Oh, that the vessel had remained empty, rather than it should be filled first and then be left void." The prophet admitted that, though as a rule he was acquainted with all things that were to happen, Yahuah had left him in the dark about the misfortune that had befallen her. With trust in Yahuah, he gave his staff to his disciple Gehazi and sent him to bring the boy back to life. But Gehazi was unworthy of his master. His conduct toward the Shunammite was not becoming a disciple of the prophet, and above all, he had no faith in the possibility of accomplishing the mission entrusted to him. Instead of obeying the behest of Elisha, not to speak a word on the way to the child of the Shunammite, Gehazi made sport of the task laid upon him. To whatever man he met, he addressed the questions, "Dost thou suppose this staff can bring the dead back to life?" The result was that he forfeited the power of executing the errand with which he had been charged. Elijah himself had to perform the miracle. The prophet uttered the prayer, "O Lord of the world, as thou did wonders through my master Elijah, and did permit him to bring the dead to life, so I pray thee, do thou perform a wonder through me, and let me restore life to this lad." The prayer was granted, and the child was revived. The act of the prophet proves the duty of gratitude in return for hospitality. Elisha did not attempt to resuscitate his own kith and kin who had been claimed by death. He invoked a miracle for the sake of the woman who had welcomed him kindly to her house. He said he didn't even revive his own kin. He just let his own folks stay in the grave. But to this woman who treated him kindly, he restored her son's life to him. Okay, put some Vaseline. Oh, hold on, please. Gehazi proved untrustworthy by his conduct on this occasion. Again aroused the ire of the prophet when he disregarded the order not to accept money from Naaman, the Syrian captain. He did not succeed in deceiving the prophet. On his return from Naaman, he found Elisha occupied with the study of the chapter of the Mishnah Shabbat, which deals with the 8 reptiles. The prophet Elisha greeted him with a rebuke. "Thou villain, the time has come for me to be rewarded for the study of the Mishnah about the 8 reptiles. May my reward be that the disease of Naaman afflict thee and thy descendants forevermore." Scarcely had these words escaped his lips when he saw the leprosy come out of Gehazi's face. Gehazi deserved the punishment on account of his base character. He was sensual and envious and did not believe in the resurrection of the dead. His unworthy qualities were displayed in his conduct toward the Shunammite and toward the disciples of Elisha. When the pretty Shunammite came to the prophet in her grief over the death of her child, Gehazi took her passionately in his arms under the pretext of forcing her away from the prophet on whom she had laid hold her supplications. As for the other disciples of Elisha, he endeavored to keep them away from the house of the prophet. He was in the habit of standing without the door. This induced many to turn away and go home, for they reasoned that if the house were not full to overflowing, Gehazi would not be standing outside. Only after Gehazi's dismissal did the disciples of Elisha increase marvelously. That Gehazi had no faith in the resurrection. That Gehazi had no faith in the resurrection of the dead is shown by his incredulity with regard to the child of the Shunammite. In spite of all these faults, Elijah regretted that he had cast off his disciple, who was a great scholar in the law, especially as Gehazi abandoned himself to a sinful life after leaving the prophet. By means of magnetism, he made the golden calves at Bethel float in the air, and many were brought to believe in the divinity of these idols. Moreover, he engraved the great and awful name of Yahuah in their mouth. Thus they were enabled to speak, and they gave forth the same words Yahuah had proclaimed from Sinai. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So let me tell you, a prophet or a prophet's disciple, they can do a lot of damage when they go rogue and if they don't stay close by the most holy. Right now, you out here performing magic tricks for the people using the most holy name of the God of Israel, right? Because you had learned it. You was a disciple of Elisha. So, of course, you knew the ineffable name or the great and terrible, the great and awful name of Yahuah, whereby miracles are done in the world. You take this, your knowledge, and now you use it to perform magic tricks in the world. There is people living on the dark side using Yahuah's name to perform magic tricks and wonders for people to make them think that they truly have power in and of themselves, right? They are there. Don't y'all ever do that. Not that I think that any of y'all ever would, but just in case. So what were the artificial means by which he regained his prophetic spirit? It didn't mention what it was, but I would possibly have to say by a lot of prayer and fasting. Because remember, he didn't originally get it by prayer and fasting, whereby we have to do that now. So, because he was a disciple of Elijah, right? And so because he was a faithful disciple of Elijah, learning about Yahuah and the Torah and reverencing Yahuah's name, the spirit that was upon, it was a rhetorical question. Oh, you let me get this far in saying it? It was, okay, I get you. But now, I'm already saying it now. Look. Okay, Uncle Dan, sometime, I don't know if you're throwing out rhetorical questions to me just to see what I know, or if you're really asking a question. So I just by default, I'll just answer the question if y'all put questions out there. Unless you started, this is a rhetorical question, or after you make your comment, do a finger point up. That was a rhetorical question, Pam. You ain't got to answer, so, all right. But anyway, I was going to kind of expound on that a little bit, but I don't know. But yeah, so he didn't have to pray. Just by him being faithful, Elijah said, well, what do you want? He said, I want a double portion of your anointing, right? Before you go. And Elijah said, okay, if you see me when the chariots of heaven come take me, you'll be granted your wish. Elisha never left Elijah's side, right? When the chariots came to get Elijah, it says they were so engrossed in conversation about Torah and the awesomeness of Yahuah that it said, that we just read that in the previous paragraph. It said that the angel who came to get him, the chariots, they had to go back, mission unfulfilled. So they had to come twice for Elijah to take him, right? That doesn't sound too far-fetched, right? Because what happened when Yahuah tried to get Moses' attention, right? Moses was so dedicated in his work to his father-in-law Jethro. He said, look, Moses is so focused on his work. He said, I gotta get his attention. Look, toss a rock or something. Because this boy can go look this way. You know what? burn the bush. He gonna wonder about that. Let the bush burn, but don't let it burn up. That's gonna catch his attention. And once we can break his state, I can get his attention. Hey, Moses, my dude, come talk to me for a second, right? Look, so it's the same thing. But yeah, I believe that it's about the art of, I'm not saying that prayer and fasting is artificial means, but he got it supernaturally. It was dropped on him, but because of his anger, he couldn't keep it under control. It was taken from him. So now he had to manually go through doing the work, right? Doing the work to get this gift of prophecy and all his prophetical gifts back, right? That I do know those gifts can come by prayer and much fasting, right? So that's why I just assume. I could be wrong, but based on what I know up until this day, to this point, Mommy, I believe those. Yes, baby girl.
Can you get some of your fruit?
Yes, you can have some of my fruit. I'm thinking that was the artificial means. So artificial means, so to speak, right? Because it doesn't say he performed any kind of magic tricks or anything to get it back, right? You know, so I don't know. At least that's my understanding. He had to manually do the work now to get it back, right? Okay. Let me see. Let me go back here. Gehazi and his shenanigans. In spite of all these faults, Elisha regretted that he had cast off his disciple, who was a great scholar in the law, especially as Gehazi abandoned himself to a sinful life after leaving the prophet. By means of magnetism, he made the golden calves at Bethel float in the air, and many were brought to believe in the divinity of these idols. Moreover, he engraved the great and awful name of Yahuah in their mouth. Thus they were able to speak, and they gave forth the same words Yahuah had proclaimed from Sinai. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Elisha accordingly repaired to Damascus to lead Gehazi back to the paths of righteousness, but he remained impenitent. For he said, from thyself I have learned that there is no return for him who not only sins himself, but also induces others to sin. So Gehazi died without having done aught to atone for his transgressions, which were so great that he is one of the few Hebrews who have no share in paradise. His children inherited his leprosy. He and his 3 sons are the 4 leprous men who informed the king of Israel of the precipitate flight of the Syrian host. Elisha's excessive severity toward his servant Gehazi and toward the mocking boys of Jericho did not go unpunished. He had to endure 2 periods of disease, and the 3rd sickness that befell him caused his death. Sheesh, Elisha. Look, he didn't get his anger under control. Look, let me tell y'all something. I know no better way of teaching than by, I guess it could be just like obedience, right? But it seems to have, I ain't gonna say all the times, but at least I can say that if it's a person, okay, see, here's what I understand, right? If you keep Yahuwah's commands, it says Yahuwah will keep you, right? Now, unless you just ignorantly doing something, not paying attention to habits or whatever, and you get sick. But a lot of time when people who carry the presence of Yahuwah, they do something that they shouldn't do, that may not look like a big deal to us. Like, we're like, them bears done right, should have ate you up. You done called the man bald head. Go up, ye bald head. So Elisha called bears and ate up them boys, right? A whole forest sprang up, my G, right? A whole forest sprang up, and it was infested with bears immediately, and it took out those men, right? We just read about that. But Yahuwah said, now before I go on, remember when Yahuwah came and got Abraham? Let's go all the way back to the beginning with Abraham. And Yahuwah is serious about this anger issue that we have, right? He said, listen, go ahead. He sent the angel to get Abraham. He said, go ahead, take Abraham all through the earth. Let him see everything, right? Well, you know, Abraham was Yahuwah's friend. He said, let him see everything, right? Yahuwah let Abraham, he gave Abraham free reign to do whatever he wanted to do, because Abraham did not abuse the gifts, right, and the information he had. So as they were traversing through the earth, the angel and Abraham, right, Abraham came upon 3 different scenarios, right? And this one particular scenario, he said he saw a husband committing adultery with this particular woman, right? And so what he do, he spoke a curse over this dude because he was breaking the Torah, he was committing adultery. He said, let him die, because he's committing adultery. And the person before then, he also spoke a curse. He said, let him die. What Yahuah said, wait, hold on, angel. Take Abraham to his own household. He has no sympathy for the wicked, right? Not that the wicked should have sympathy upon them, but Yahuah sees further than what we do. He said, I'm good to the just and to the unjust. He gives all men the opportunity to repent, no matter what you did, right? Yahuah gives them the opportunity, right? He said he takes no joy in seeing the wicked perish. Like us, on the other hand, we're like bears immediately. Let's go. Forest, bears, eat them up. It'd be better that you take your last breath today. That way, I ain't got to deal with you. They ain't got to deal with you. The world be better off without you. But Yahuah, you see, he has his whole anger under control, right? Although we see him lashing, I ain't gonna say lashing out, let me not say that, I ain't gonna say lashing out. But when Yahuah does it, he does it knowing the end from the beginning, right? And so he'll have conversations with Moses and with Abraham, having this banter back and forth. Okay, so what you think I should do? Should I go ahead and kill everybody? No, because if you kill everybody, then the Egyptians gonna say that you brought them out of here to kill them here, because you couldn't handle them and keep them under control. Right here, you right, my G. Hold on, so. What you think we should do? Like, Yahuah already know this, but he's so cool that he'll have conversation with you.
Man, that's a different level of cool right there.
Right, that's a whole different level of cool, right? So he includes you on it, right? And even although he may know what he's going to do, if you offer I ain't gonna say if you offer a suggestion to Yah, he might take it, but we see that you can sit and talk, and he'll let you, even with Moses, right? He'll let you have what you ask for, but you need to be sure this is truly what you want, right? And so even with Moses, he said, look, I'm not even going to let you go over here into the promised land, right? And so he kept talking and talking and talking, and so until he's like, look, at least I'll let you look in there, right? I'll let you look and see, right? So even when Yahuah, he shouldn't even let him look in there, because now that he done looked and he saw how good the land was, he was like, oh, I really got to get in there now. Just let me go. He said, you know what, look, take everything off of me, give it to Joshua, and then I'll become Joshua's servant. He said, no, because if the people still see you alive, they ain't gonna pay no attention to Joshua. So you got to die, Moses. You got to go, right? We done already set this in place. He said, Lord, please don't let me go. I don't want to go. Right? So all this, he said, okay, Moses, right? He said, so I'll let this happen, right? So he eventually gave Moses what he asked for, and what happens, right? Everything that Yahuah said immediately began to take place. The Spirit had left Moses, and it came upon Joshua, to where when Joshua spoke with his great wisdom, the people's like, oh my gosh, Joshua? Moses, is this correct? What it said? Moses, it didn't say these words, but Moses was bereft of the wisdom. Like the spirit of wisdom had left him already. It said it left him so much so that he couldn't even keep up with the wisdom of Joshua. That's what it said, right? And so at that point, the people began to, it was a split. Right, so the ones like clearly the spirit of Yahuah is on Joshua now, we hear, but then you got those faithful to Moses, like, no, Moses is our master, Moses is our king, he is our teacher, we'll follow him, and it caused a split. And then what did it say happened? Moses then asked Yahuah to let him die. He said, this is too much. The people, they doing all this, they won't even listen to Joshua. Yahuah's like, I told you, that's why you can't go in there. Like, I had already reorchestrated everything for Joshua to take over. So, all right, let's go ahead and do it my way. Okay, So, but up until the day he left, Moses, you got 2 days left. Moses, you got 3 hours left. Moses, you got but 1 hour left. Then you coming with me, right?
Man, I'm saying, now, he said 1 hour left, then you coming with me. 1 hour feels so happy for some reason, but then also I'll be low-key sad.
Yeah, so I said all that.
It's like your mom picking you up from school, about to take you home, like in the middle of school, and you so happy. Like, man, whatever you did, I got so happy. Like, oh yeah. Oh my God, man, that was paradise.
Yeah. Okay, yo. So we got on that by talking about him, Elijah not controlling his anger. and what happens. So when you don't control your anger, at least those in leadership, we kind of see things happen to them immediately, like, oh my gosh. And I wonder about these. Now listen, y'all rest their souls, right? But we've had some leaders in the church world over the years who have seemed to have died sudden deaths, right? You know, and I will always wonder about this. I'm like, Father, something ain't right about this. You know, it seemed like they're done. The Pope is not. What are you talking about? He didn't get the Pope yet.
He needs you.
Yeah, listen, the wicked live on. I'm going to just leave it like that if you talking about the Pope. Okay, look, so there are some great men and women of Yah who have done great things. I mean, they've written books and all these things, right? But then something happens and they die in this horrible way, right? And it's like, what in the world happened? Like, you have a husband and a wife die in a plane crash, and it just shook me for days. I'm like, what? Why would that happen? Why would you let that happen, right? And so this is before I started really just going in deep, and all these things are happening. And then you have other ones died, and great preachers, and like the ones that look like us, right? You know, all of a sudden it seemed like all of a sudden, boom, they're dead. I'm like, what in the world? See, but we don't see what Yahuah sees behind closed doors. We just see this whole big, the famous portion of them or whatever. But now I understand when they die like that, it's because, especially when they aren't older, like they haven't fully lived out their years. I understand now that it's something that they did that they didn't get right, and they had to be taken off the scene, right? Because if they had not, they would have led multiple people astray. They would have turned many people away from Yahuah, right? Now, I'm not going to speak ill of any of them. That's why I didn't name any names, but I named a couple situations, right? I wasn't there personally, but now I understand a little bit more and how Yahuah deals with those in leadership. It caused me to begin to sit back and think about these people now, right? And some people would say, oh, this blasphemy, don't you dare. I'm just like, well, I'm not saying it, but what I understand about this is this. We can see it. That's Yahuah's mode of operation through and through. If we are familiar with Yahuah's character in the Old Testament all the way through and how he operates, we can clearly see that same operation in play today with his leaders, those who truly belong to him, right? It's like he give you a short period of time to repent and get whatever it is that you've been hiding, you get it under control. And then it happens in a couple of different ways. Either like you go immediately, and I believe the ones who go immediately before whatever it is comes out, because I believe that if it had come out, it would have been more detrimental, right? So it take you right there in the prime of your hidden sin, and you got to go, and people left wondering, oh my gosh, the enemy is busy. The enemy done killed the like. The enemy is not bigger than Yahuah. Satan is subject to Yahuah himself, right? He doesn't do anything without Yahuah's permission. We know that through and through, right? So that right there, that never stood well with me. I'm like, no, nobody's more powerful than Yahuah. Yahuah is controlling everything. He will allow things to happen, right? So when you don't get your anger under control, anger leads to deeper sins, y'all. So that's why Yahuah have to deal with leaders immediately. All right, so
you don't know who's watching.
Right, you don't know who.
You probably got a future prophet that he need to bring up, but you just messing it up for him.
Exactly.
So that's the reason why you really
exactly like immediately you gotta go, because I have a treasure down here, and if I leave you in place, that's gonna taint that treasure. And I need that treasure. I need you to, but you refuse to get it in order. So you come on up here and be with me today. Today you shall be with me in paradise. Look, Elisha's excessive severity toward his servant Gehazi and toward the mocking boys of Jericho did not go unpunished. He had to endure 2 periods of disease, and the third sickness that befell him caused his death. He is the first known to history who survived the sickness. Before him, death had been the inevitable companion of disease. A great miracle marked the end of a life rich with miraculous deeds. A dead man. If you don't help him get that food out that thing, thank you. A great miracle marked the end of a life rich in miraculous deeds. A dead man revived at the touch of Elisha's beard and stood on his feet. It was a worthy character for whom the wonder was accomplished. Shalom, the son of Tikvah, the husband of Huldah the prophetess, a man of noble descent who had led a life of loving kindness. He was in the habit of going daily beyond the He was in the habit of going daily beyond the city, bearing the pitcher of water, from which he gave every traveler to drink, a good deed that received a double reward. His wife became a prophetess, and when he died, and his funeral, attended by a large concourse of people, was disturbed by the invasion of the Arameans, he was given new life by contact with the bones of Elisha. He lived to have a son, Hanamel by name. The death of Elisha was a great misfortune for the Israelites. So as long as he was alive, no Aramean troops entered Palestine. The first invasion by them happened on the day of his burial. Okay, and we're going to stop right here. And we'll pick up with Jonah tomorrow, the flight of Jonah. And so we know Jonah was also, I believe Jonah was the son that Elisha, the son of the daughter that Elisha had raised. If I remember that correctly. We read about it. Yeah, I think it was the boy that Elijah had raised. That was Jonah. Because it told us a few days ago when we read that part. Okay, but anyway, we're getting that tomorrow because this starts with Jonah, the flight of Jonah, then Jonah in the well, and the repentance of Nineveh. Right? All right, beautiful people. So that was Legends of the Jews. We started on page 454. And we ended on page 456. We read 2 Samuel 1, 2, and 3. Y'all, it is Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. March 31st, 2021. Day 116 of year 3 of reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets. And of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 785. All right, y'all. Let's see. Okay, I got my title for the day. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and do the blessing. Then I'm going to scroll through real quick and see. Because I saw a couple comments. I'm not sure if they're questions, but I saw them popping up. So let's go ahead and do the blessing real quick for those who need to go to work. I don't want y'all getting in trouble because y'all can't go to work when y'all supposed to. Wait a minute. Did I just say that? Oh, no. Thought I hit the wrong. Guys, I thought I had the YouTube video. Okay, I just moved it by mistake. Okay. All right, y'all. The blessing is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And Yahuah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuah bless us and keep us. May Yahuah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuah lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, remember the first 21 verses of Numbers chapter 6 is the Nazarite vow. Beautiful people, remember, man or woman can take the Nazarite vow. Okay. Dream. Oh, when I was talking about the anger, you talking about you had a dream about your anger. Alicia, they don't need to breathe no more. Yeah, need the anger under control. Pumpkin, thank you. Thank you. She said happy birthday again. Thank you. Okay, y'all. Christy, hey girl, hey Dana. No, that was unthinkable when that happened. What happened, Dana? I know you posted this a while ago, but I forget exactly what what part I was on when you said that. Okay. All right, Aliyah. Bless you, my brother. All right, y'all. Y'all willing. I see y'all back here tomorrow, bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, beautiful people. All right. Hello, this is Pamela.
Hi, this is Leah with JB Hunt and Kimball.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm just calling to schedule delivery for Monday, April the 5th.
Yes, ma'am. How many pieces?
62.
Oh, 62. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a PO number?
Yep, I have C242334-7.
-7. Okay. All right. What time will you guys be in our area?
About 11:30.
Okay. All right. Can you have the driver call when he's about an hour out?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I do have it going to 3804 Cook Boulevard.
Yes, Unit 6. They can back right up to the dock.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, beautiful people. Gotta get started. Duty calls, right? Calls starting to come in now. All right, y'all. Y'all willing. I see you in the morning. Kathy, shalom, shalom. Okay. All right, beautiful people. We out of here. Peace.